I guess like pain and triggers and need for something is, if you really want it, if you break your leg, you go to the hospital and you say blank check, whatever it takes to fix it, like get me out of this pain. And it really is a different budget discussion. But do you have any thoughts on the order of these things in our marketing and our sales process to make sure we're justifying the right things at the right time?
Yeah, I do actually. It's what you're talking about is making me think of three different behavioral science principles: the idea of loss aversion, the idea of framing, and the idea of availability bias. And so I'll step back a second and say, a lot of times in sales and marketing, we have a goal, of course we do, which is to make the sale, right? That's the big thing. That's what we want. And so sometimes we'll just kind of charge right in with the big ask, right? Oh, how about buying this, or here's why you should buy this. We're having a sale, or let me tell you everything I know about our garage door opener because it is fabulous and you're going to love it. And what we're not doing is we're not putting ourselves in the prospect's shoes. And from a prospect's perspective, there are going to be certain things that are going to just work a little bit better. That are going to make them more receptive to the messaging. So, for example, behavioral scientists talk about loss aversion, the idea that people are twice as motivated to avoid the pain of loss as they are to achieve the pleasure of gain. But in sales and marketing, what do? Right, Mike? We double down on the gains, right? The benefits, the advantages, all the wonderful things that will happen if you just say yes to me. And
Mhm.
sometimes what we have to remember is people will be, more motivated to either avoid pain, either the pain they'll find themselves in if they don't say yes to us, or they'll be more motivated to avoid the pain that they can miss out on by saying yes to us. So pointing out, look, this can happen to you unless you say yes, or this can happen, or this, you can avoid this happening to you if you say yes. So
I don't want
sometimes
to
we
interrupt
charge.
you, but I love that if you dive deep enough on pain, it all ends up like being alone, homeless in a van down by the river. You're like, if you just keep asking why, you're like, well, if I don't get the new garage door, my wife leaves me, I get divorced, I lose half my money, and I end up in a van down by the river. And like,
Sure.
it all, like, even for your job or your promotion or something, it's like, well, if we don't get this new software, I lose my job, then I lose my wife, and then I'll end up in a van down by the river. It all are these deep-seated emotional reasons of
It
things.
makes me think that there's probably a big market selling like vans that are burglar proof and it's particularly comfortable because eventually people are going to end up there anyway. So let's sell those.
That's funny, but you had a couple of others. Did we hit those other ones
Sure, sure.
sufficiently?
So, so one thing is like, don't charge in, assuming that the benefits are going to do the thing, because sometimes loss aversion is the way to go. The other is framing. And you'd mentioned something earlier about, talking about price too quickly. And there's some research that indicates that framing things in terms of time can actually be more beneficial than framing things in terms of price. So if you get people to think about the time they're going to spend with your product or with your service, what happens is they start to think about, well, okay, how am I going to spend my time, interacting with this product or the service? And that's going to involve certain experiences. And those experiences, of course, are going to involve some emotion. But basically, it focuses people on kind of the quality of the experience they're going to have, the quality of the time they're going to spend with the product. And that makes them a little bit less price sensitive, right? They're not as focused on it. There are a couple of researchers that ran this experiment. It was funny. They came out of Stanford, and they ran an experiment using the proverbial new business, right? The lemonade stand, or the proverbial first business, I should say. So they set up a lemonade stand, and they had three different signs that they would rotate. So sometimes as people walk by, they would see a sign that said, spend a little time and enjoy some lemonade. Other times people would walk by and the sign would say, spend a little money and enjoy some lemonade. And other times they would simply see a sign that said, enjoy some lemonade. And what the researchers found was more people stopped when it said, spend a little time and enjoy some lemonade. People were allowed to pay, whatever they wanted. It was a sliding scale for the lemonade. They found that people spent more when the sign said, spend a little time and enjoy some lemonade. And then in all cases, people were asked to do a satisfaction survey, and people reported higher customer satisfaction scores when they stopped when the sign had said, spend a little time. And researchers kind of pulled from that the idea that when you focus on time, when you frame things in terms of time and experience, it makes people less price sensitive, right? These people spent more on the lemonade. They had a better experience. So, we want to talk about, framing things in terms of loss. We also want to talk about framing things in terms of time and experience versus focusing them on money. And then I think the third thing that you made me think about was something that behavioral scientists call availability bias. And that's the likelihood, or it's the belief that people have, that the likelihood of something happening is based on how easily they can recall an example. So if it's easy for you to think of an example, you think, all right, this is more likely to happen, and therefore I need the product. So before we ask people to buy, we first want to get them to think of a time in the past when, if they had our product or service, it would have really come in handy, or even get them to imagine a time in the future when they could see themselves benefiting from it. So we want to kind of lay the groundwork, or set the stage before we then plunge in and say, hey, you should buy our product, or hey, we're having a sale on our product, or hey, let me tell you about the benefits of our product. But using that idea of availability bias, people are going to judge the likelihood of an event happening. And in our case, the event is their need for what we're selling, based on how easily they can recall a relevant example. So what we want to do is trigger that relevant example.